Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm Reverend J. Wolin, the settled minister of this Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota. It is so good to be with you here this Sunday morning. If you are a visitor here, whether online or in person, we want to personally welcome you. If you're online, we invite you to sign in on our welcome page there on our website, uucs.com. I guess one day I'll remember that perfectly. And if you do register on there, we will as well, you'll get a weekly email with our newsletter and some Zoom links as well. And we do encourage everybody, including visitors, to participate in any of the events at this congregation. And as well, there is always, I would say, a sacred ritual of coffee and cookies after service so that we can get to know each other better. And this morning we have a few announcements. The first one will be from the auction from Vicky Cat.
Good morning. Morning. Oh, look at y'all. So, it's auction time. What season is it? It's the holiday season, you might answer, but for us here at UUCS, it is auction season, also in full swing. So, what better way to celebrate our new season than by donating? Many of us would like to know what to donate, and I understand that for some you're not sure of what to donate. How about pies to piano lessons, a swim party to a summer lunch, fresh flowers to Florida studio tickets, golf basket to glass art, transportation services, Taste of Italy, kayak to crochet, condos to a cabana on the beach. Come to the auction table this morning. If you remember from last week, we had our wish list. Here I am. And now it is abounding with ideas, items, services, tangibles that your friends would like to bid on. So we have catalogs also from prior auctions to spark those ideas. In order to donate, you follow the link. Follow the link on Contact, Facebook, our website. The link is everywhere. Everywhere. Just find it. And when you click on that link, it will take you to a home page, and on that page is a donate button. It'll click the link and it'll take you right to the page where you can donate. And if you need ideas on that same page, there are old catalogs to look at. You can also come to the auction table, and we have paper donation forms. So either way you want to go. Would you like to participate in our auction besides being bidders and donators? How about being a volunteer? We have a plethora of opportunities ranging from setting up, cleaning up, hosting bid tables, being a live auction spotter, that's a new one, and many, many more. As an added bonus this year, for those of you who would like to help set up the sanctuary on Friday before the auction, we'll celebrate with pizza. Aha, I can see y'all coming to the table. So, save the date. Saturday, February 4th, from noon to 3, and most of all, celebrate, indulge, and let loose. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yeah. I want you to know, not to put any pressure, but I have already put a donation in for a service of your choice to work with me to create a worship service, and you can bid on that. So get your donations in. And just to let you know, I already actually got to be in somebody's donation when they did like a dinner for 12, and it was really delicious. And I'm going to say, if anybody puts like a fruit pie a month in there, I will bid on it. I just want to let you know that. Just a couple other quick announcements talking about desserts. After the service today, we will be having a retirement party for Catherine Isabel, who's retiring after many, many years of service, and there'll be a cake over in Lexow, and as well as a time to spend together with her and say goodbye. This Wednesday, the 21st at 5:30, we have a solstice service with Elaine Silver and members of our church here who will be leading that service at 5:30 p.m. My installation, just again to remind you, January 8th at 4 p.m. And lastly, the Art Council wants to let you know there is a new and colorful art exhibit in the Lexow wing by our member artists, Marvin Fields and Penny Soldatus. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Penny. And that'll be there until January 12th, so we hope you take a moment to see that. It's really beautiful. I am so appreciative of the fact that every day when I'm in the office, I get to experience this beautiful art. And so I hope you do too as well. So let us just take a moment now, after all the announcements. Let's just breathe for a second. Breathe in slowly and then let it out slowly. Relax your shoulders, or maybe something else that might be ailing you right now. Just sort of relax it. And just calm your senses as we start with worship in our opening reading by Henry Nouwen from his book, Reaching Out. To take the scriptures and read them is the first thing we have to do to open ourselves to the mysteries of the universe. Reading the scriptures is not as easy as it seems, since we tend to make anything and everything we read subject to analysis and discussion. But the scriptures should lead us first of all to contemplation and meditation. Instead of taking the word apart, we should bring them together in our innermost being. Instead of wondering whether we agree or disagree, we should wonder which words are directly spoken to us and connect directly with our own personal story. Instead of thinking about words as potential subjects for an interesting dialogue, we should be willing to let them penetrate into the hidden-most corners of our heart, even those places where no other word has yet found entrance. And so, now as we move into worship, I invite you to open your hearts and your minds to the mysteries of the universe, to contemplation, and to find the most hidden corners of your hearts. And now I invite up Anna, who will be lighting our chalice, and I ask you to join me in saying our words of affirmation, which are on the screen in your order of service. Let us say them together. As we light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we affirm our fourth source of wisdom, our living tradition, Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. I now invite you to rise in body and or spirit for our opening hymn, number 235, Deck the Halls with Boughs of Holly.
Jean heaved a long sigh as she looked at the box of Christmas cards, waiting for her to grab them out and start to write her annual Christmas cheer. But this year, it just seemed so heavy a task, since where before there had been 2 names, now there would only be 1. The loss of her partner had left her feeling vacant and incomplete. Maybe she would skip the cards this year. And the holiday decorating. The doorbell ringing startled her. Going to the door, she cracked it open, but no one was there. She poked her head out and looked up and down the hall. No one was there. Then she noticed at her feet a large gift bag. What? She thought to herself. Jean brought the bag and felt around for some card or gift. But what she found was a folded paper. And opening it, she read, "This is a story for you from a long time ago, a slice of life." Why, she wondered, would someone send her a story? So she sat down and read on. There was a young boy who was new to the orphanage. Christmas was nearing. The other orphans told him tales of a wondrous tree that would appear in the hall on Christmas Eve and the scores of candles that would light its branches. He heard stories of the mysterious benefactor who made it possible each year. But there was more, the children insisted. Oh yes, instead of the orphanage's meager fare of thin porridge, they would be served a fragrant stew and crusty hot bread on that special night. And last and best of all, the young boy learned each of them would receive a holiday treat. He would join the line of children to get his very own. Jean was confused. Where was the rest of the story? She turned the paper over, and at the bottom was a message. It read, "Everyone needs to celebrate Christmas, right? Stay tuned for part 2. Jean faintly smiled while she refolded the paper. The next day, she forgot about the story as she went to work and then on her errands before arriving home tired. She decided to get her treasured gift from her grandmother, a menorah Christmas tree, a blend of both of her parents' upbringing, and as she placed it on the table, she heard the doorbell ring. Well, she found another gift bag. Smiling to herself, she pulled out the paper and read, "To get his very own orange." An orange, Jean thought, that's a treat? But she read on. Yes, the other children assured him, each of them would get their very own orange. Well, oranges were very rare, but once the young boy had seen them at the merchant stall in the village. Their smell was so tangy and sweet, he had sneakily rubbed his finger against one and he fancied he could smell it there for days. And now he was to get one of his own to smell and taste? What heaven! The story again ended abruptly there, but Jean knew there would be more coming tomorrow, so she waited eagerly to hear about the boy and his orange. The next evening, when the doorbell rang, Jean was ready. When she opened the door, she grabbed the waiting bag, which was heavier than before. So Jean opened the paper and read, Christmas Eve was all that the children promised. The piney scent of the fir tree competed with the aroma of lamb stew and homey yeast bread. The scores of candles lit the room with golden halos, and as the children lined up, each was given an orange. Finally, it was his turn, but as he approached the stern headmaster, he heard, "Too bad, young man, too bad. But the count was in the day before you arrived, and there's not an orange for you. Next year, for sure, you will get an orange." Well, the boy was devastated, and he raced to his bed in tears. Wait, Jean thought, that isn't how I want this story to go. She felt the boy's pain and loneliness. But the story continued. The boy felt a gentle tap on his back, so stifled his sobs and turned. And there on his mattress was a napkin, and in that napkin was an orange made of segments that each child had shared with him to make one whole, complete fruit, an orange of his very own. So Jean wiped away her tears and pulled from the gift bag an orange, a foil-covered chocolate orange, already separated into segments. And for the first time in weeks, she really smiled. Grabbing her box of cards, she retold the story in each one and included her card with a wrapped slice of the chocolate orange. There was one for Melanie, down 2 floors, facing her second round of radiation. Her walking partner, Dave, who was raising a difficult teen. And for Catherine, the sole caregiver to her aging aunt. So Jean never knew who gave her such solace, but we know. For you see, Jean was known in the apartment building as Angel Jean, which the kids giggled about. She was always smiling and greeting and helping out where she could. Her apartment became the go-to place for the children because she had always had something fun to do, and it was the children who noticed her sadness. Fortunately, one of the children heard this same story during his UU religious education class and remembered the moral that giving a slice of your life can make another person feel whole. Well, the children never fully understood their innate need to comfort those who were sad or lonely, but we know. Each year in the month of December, we followed decades-old traditions of coming together to make connections with each other and with the divine. Whether you celebrate the miracle of a child's birth, the miracle of a light in the darkness, the miracle of the renewal of the world, or the miracle of community, each of us is renewed in spirit to care for each other and our world in the days and months to come. So now I invite our younger UUs to join me in the West Wing as we go and party while you guys hear your sermon. Thank you.
Our centering words today are Psalm 25 as adapted by me. We lift up our souls and we trust in the universe. We will not allow others' perceptions or judgments cast a shadow on us. Let us become self-aware. Let us seek the truth. And let us learn no matter how long it takes. And in doing so, we shall find salvation. If we shall ask for mercy, let us first be merciful ourselves. Let us bask in the love that is possible in each interaction that we have. Let us be good and upright, but let us remember that each of us has missed the mark. And so let us be gentle with others who find themselves suffering as a result of a bad decision. Let us remind ourselves to be humble when we do have abundance, for there was once a time, or there may yet be a time, when our abundance did and will fail us. Be gracious and be generous to all. Bring your presence to the lonely, bring healing to the afflicted, bring love to those who are of troubled hearts, bring justice to those who are in distress. May integrity and uprightness preserve us and be with us in our day-to-day struggles of life. May our actions bring hope to ourselves, to others, and to our ailing world. Let us now take a moment of silence to contemplate our values as they are lived in the world and in our relationships. Our next reading is from the Christian scriptures. Many of you know there are duplicate readings in different scriptures. So it is from Luke 12:33 and Matthew 6:25. Do not worry. The words of Jesus, he said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds in the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather in barns, and yet they are fed. And why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. Ye of little faith, do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you ought to drink and for what you ought to wear. And do not keep worrying. For it is the nations of the world that strive after all of these things. Instead, strive for the kingdom of God and righteousness. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble is enough for today. Sell your possessions and give alms, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. End of reading. And we do hope that your heart is with this church, and although we do not ask you to sell all of your possessions, we do ask for you to share some of your treasures with us today as we take our offering, and we ask you to be as generous as you can be. For those online or here on your cell phone, there is a link to donate in the description of the YouTube video or on our website, right under the description of today's service. So let this sacred time begin. Our next reading is from the excerpt from The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity by the Reverend Theodore Parker. Christianity is a simple thing, very simple. It is absolute pure morality, absolute pure religion, the love of humanity. The only form it demands is a divine life, doing the best thing in the best way from the highest motives. Try it by reason or conscience or faith, things highest in human nature. We see no redundance, we feel no deficiency. Examine the particular duty it enjoins: humility, reverence, sobriety, gentleness, charity, forgiveness, fortitude, resignation, faith, and active love. Well, it's so good to see the choir growing. If you too want to participate in the choir, everyone is welcome. I believe Thursday nights at 7 p.m. is 7:30 p.m. is when they practice. So just stop on by if you are interested in singing with the choir. So growing up, I lived in a typical New York City middle-class, out-of-borough neighborhood, a mix of Irish and Italian, Catholic and Jewish families. We all went to school and played together, although I have to say we never really talked about religion a lot on the schoolyard. When I was young, my parents embracing the melting pot that was New York, we would spend Christmas Eve with friends who were Catholic. And so at the age of 5 years old, I had my first encounter with the Christian world. And I would say this first act as a child, or perhaps maybe because I was a child, showed me that we were much more alike than different. And this lesson stayed with me forever. This set the foundation for my beliefs of interacting with people, not to judge them based on their labels, but rather based on how they acted in the world. And so I remember the first time I actually entered a church when I was 10 years old. My childhood friend, who I used to share Christmas Eve with, invited me to go to something called a Mass. And I went not out of any rebelliousness. It was just sort of the first manifestation, I would say, of my exploratory nature. And this was one of my first great religious adventures. But even so, I remember it like it was yesterday, a palpable fear I felt upon entering this church. I wondered, would I burn upon entering? And then I saw this large statue of a man hanging on a cross, and that's when the real fear set in. I admit, at the time, I remember I was like 10 years old, I was confused because I did not know what the story of Jesus was. And I thought to myself, like, is this what they do to the non-believers? I don't know. And if I'd known at the time that Jesus was a Jewish rabbi, I think I would have really freaked out even more at that time. But my friend assured me everything was all right, that this was the image of the God that they believed in. And I do think there is an important point here, just like we teach our children religious education, understanding and learning about each other's different and in some ways similar underlying religious beliefs is one avenue that I believe will one day in the future lead to cooperation and peace. Now, some of Unitarian Universalists' formative theology stemmed from an early Christianity which were not accepted as the orthodox view of Christianity. Non-orthodox views were considered heresy. So the etymology of the word heresy is to choose. Right? Unitarian Universalists choose to believe differently and not follow by rote what we are given. And if that is a heresy, I am proud to be a heretic. And I am glad they do not burn heretics anymore. And I think these early heretical ideas, such as the unity of God versus the Trinity, universal salvation, questioning the divinity of Jesus, was always a suppressed undercurrent in Christianity throughout time. This heretical theology once again saw the light of day in the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. And these views have evolved over the last half century and continue to evolve. The question is, how are the Christian writings regarding events that happened over 2,000 years ago relevant to us today? My quest to discover this took hold at my onset of my seminary experience. I took a number of classes in the Christian scriptures, and these were taught with a historical critical approach, meaning what did these writings mean to the people at the time that they were written? And I was the only student in the class who had never read the Christian scriptures prior to entering seminary. And so therefore, it was very good because I had no preconceived notions about the writings and their interpretation. And so I engaged the writings with an open heart and an open mind. And I was the one who always asked, well, why do you come to such a conclusion? Do you believe that really happened? So I got a lot of glances and rolled eye looks from I was the only Unitarian in the class. The Christian scriptures, though, for those who may not be as aware of them, include 4 gospel accounts of the life of Jesus' ministry, the Gospel of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. They include the writings attributed to Paul, who was an ardent follower of Jesus, even though he had never met him, as well as other numerous writings called epistles. Now, for today, we will look at just the larger theme of these 4 gospel stories and how maybe they could relate to Unitarian Universalism today. It is clear Jesus was a Jewish teacher. Much of the writing in the Gospels involved his teaching his disciples about the Jewish law and how to apply it in their day-to-day lives. And just as there are various interpretations of the Jewish law today, there were sharp divisions even in the time of Jesus about how to apply the Jewish laws. So from other writings around that time, we know there were three major groups within Judaism. They were the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes. And in addition, there were many Jews who had assimilated into the Greek-Roman culture as well. Now, ironically, the Pharisees, who are portrayed as the enemy of Jesus in the gospel, were probably the most liberal and progressive of those three groups within Judaism, and they went on to form the rabbinic tradition that we have today. There are some scholars who believe that Jesus actually was a Pharisee and had parted ways with them, and this parting is suspected of the cause of animosity between them. But conversely, most scholars, though, believe Jesus was an Essene. The Essenes were an ascetic group that followed the Jewish laws of the Torah quite strictly. But Jesus didn't fit into any category quite so easily. In some instances in the Gospels, Jesus' teachings are much more strict than the Jewish law. For instance, his stance on prohibiting divorce. He was really hard about that. Additionally, his stance was that it wasn't enough to observe the law with ritual, that the law must be written upon your heart, which is a much higher standard, obviously. In some instances, though, Jesus was much more lenient than the Jewish law, including specifically inclusiveness of worship, as well as eating with the oppressed. There are lots of laws about who can be in worship and cleanliness, and as well as what kind of foods you can eat and who you can eat them with, and he was much more lenient on that. So in the Jewish scriptures, there are actually 613 laws to follow. And Jesus, yes, I mean, somebody went in, I did not count them myself, but somebody at some point went in and counted them all. Jesus kept it simple, though, right, to help make it easier for all people to follow. It states in Matthew 22, when Jesus was asked, "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" And he responded, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the other laws and the prophets." End quote. So I think that is a very interesting thing, that to love your neighbor is equivalent to loving God. Jesus re-examined the religion of his birth and found his own truth. He intuitively understood which laws were important and which were not in his culture and context. He did not force his truth on others, but offered it freely and openly to all who would listen. Many saw his genuineness and inclusiveness of the man and his message and chose to follow him. But over 2,000 years later, I do not think Jesus meant for us to do the same things that he did in his lifetime. I think Jesus' message was to follow his example and study and discern what are the important religious truths for our time. So over 2,000 years later, we read, stories about how Jesus performed miracles and healing and feeding people, and we say, how can this be true? And I think it's important that we reconsider what we consider a miracle, right? Consider modern day medicine, right? Organ transplants, DNA testing, cures for diseases that once ravaged populations. To me, these are miracles. The fact that the sun rises and sets every day, to me, is a miracle. Life itself is a miracle. We just have to be aware that miracles are around us every day in every part of our everyday life. That's the message I think Jesus was trying to remind his followers to just be aware of all that is around you. We don't need to take miracle stories literally or even cut them out like Thomas Jefferson did in the Jefferson Bible. He cut out all of the miracle stories. But he did, that's true. And I've seen it. It was actually on display at the Library of Congress. It was really very interesting. But anyway, they can have meanings metaphorically to us, right? Think about the miracle of the story of feeding of the thousands. I think about the story we heard from the children today, right? Maybe it's that Jesus convinced people who had an abundance of food to care and share their food, just like those children did, right? With those who were food insecure. In this day and age, with our ability to produce and distribute food, why is it that people still go hungry? Would we consider it a miracle today if no one had to go hungry? And in regard to the healing miracles, right, we need to expand our understanding of the meaning of healing. Right, having worked as a chaplain in a hospital, I can tell you most healing is not as simple as a mechanic running a diagnostic report and changing a spark plug. Although, to be honest, I have no idea if that is easy to do, to change a spark plug. I've never done that. But I do know the human body is a complex organism, which includes our mental and our spiritual capacity to impact our healing. And part of the role in healing is helping people understand this connection. I also say reconciliation is also a powerful concept in healing. You know, we use that phrase reconciliation all the time when we talk about the healing of society or the healing of a relationship, right? They're reconciled, right? And Jesus, in his worship, in his community and worship, those people who were excluded by the rigid temple laws, they were allowed to participate in worship. And this reconciliation of those excluded to become included was a form of healing for them, mental healing for them. So I just want us to expand and think about how healing, inclusion, is a form of healing for all. The next theme in the Gospels is Jesus' death on the cross. Without question, the story of Jesus' suffering has been used throughout history to inform people that to suffer is to be like God. And that message, I want to just say very loud and clear, is a dangerous and destructive concept. And due to this, too often people unnecessarily accept suffering as a way of life. This concept has been used by leaders as well as a way to placate suffering people. And we should categorically reject this line of thinking. But there is suffering in the world. And we should be working towards eliminating and alleviating suffering, not making suffering a godly virtue. And if we start with that premise, then how can this story be meaningful to us? The story of the cross is the story of what we are willing to do to transform the world and our lives. Jesus took actions in his life and death to bring about a better future world. And so I ask, what are we willing to act and do individually, as a church, as a species, to save our planet? What are we willing to sacrifice? How are we willing to act individually as a church and as a country to make sure that there is justice for all people in this society? What are we willing to sacrifice to make sure that happens? What are we willing to do individually as a church and as a community to make sure that all families and our family in the greater Sarasota area are cared for? Our world is a complex world full of many choices. Jesus and his followers made some radical choices for their lives with the goal of saving the world. And so I ask you, what radical choices are we willing to make to save our world? And now the last theme from the gospel that I want to share with you today is Jesus' resurrection. Now, in the oldest gospel that we have, printed gospel, the Gospel of Mark, Jesus was never actually physically resurrected. I used to always like to point that out to all my seminary friends. The story of the resurrection was added to later versions of Mark so it would be in concordance with all the other gospel stories. But the resurrection story, despite that fact, is still a major part of Christianity today. How can the resurrection story be meaningful to us? Well, part of humanity's existential angst has always been our knowledge that our body is going to die. Our mortality often causes us to fear death. But when we can accept death as a normal part of a cycle of life, we become more self-aware. And when we become more self-aware, we can start to live our lives more consciously and mindfully. And this acknowledgement can lead to renewed purpose in our lives based on the choices that we make, intentional choices. And this, to me, is the message of the resurrection story of Jesus, that we can start anew. We can always start anew. Unitarian Universalism is not a traditional Christianity. We could be, however, the future evolution of religion in this world. Within our principles and our sources, within our pluralistic, welcoming environment, is a place where underlying universal truths can come together. The Jesus of the gospel was the Jesus that his followers hoped to find. They were looking for someone to give them hope, right? To give them hope where there was none. And we have to ask ourselves, how and where do we find hope? How do we provide hope to others? And if we look at the scriptures with an open heart and an open mind, and look at them in the context of our 21st century lives, just as Jesus looked at the scriptures of his time, right, in the context of his time, I believe we can find choices that will help us find hope for a better future for us and for everyone. So let us find our purpose and new life. Let us help heal the world. Let us help create miracles this holiday season and all year long. I invite you to rise in body and or spirit, number hymn 131, Love Will Guide Us. Our closing words are the Beatitudes as rewritten by UU Minister Forest Church. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for in their humbleness they know the unutterable beauty of simple things. Blessed are those who mourn, for they have dared to risk their hearts by giving of their love. Blessed are the meek, for the gentle earth shall embrace them and hallow them as its own. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall know the taste of noble deeds. Blessed are the merciful, for in return theirs is the gift of giving. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall be at one with themselves and the universe. And blessed are the peacemakers, for theirs is a kinship with everything that is holy. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for the truth shall set them free. Please join me in extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry out until we are together again. Thank you for your presence here today. Thank you.